Hi OpenBoxes users. Today we're going to learn how to create an outbound stock movement in OpenBoxes. So as you can see, I am starting from my dashboard. I've logged in and I've chosen my location that I want to work from, which in this case is distribution center. Now, in order to create an outbound stock movement, I'm first going to go to outbound and then create outbound movement. Now this starts me on the workflow for creating any shipment out of my warehouse. It starts me on this page. This will look very familiar to those of you who have already watched the video for how to create an inbound stock movement. The first page is exactly the same process. So what we're going to do first is we're going to write a description. The description can be anything you want. What I always advise is that it should be something that helps you remember what exactly this shipment is. So we already have the origin and destination specified and the date. So instead I'm going to write a short description describing what the project was that we were working on. So it was for the TB project request. And that will help me remember. I'm going to say we're sending this to Anch Depot. You'll notice that the origin already pre-filled because it's coming from distribution center, which is where I am right now. We're going to skip talking about stock lists, and there will be another video on exactly how to do a outgoing shipment with a stock list. Requested by. So one of the amazing things about stock movements in OpenBoxes is they don't only capture what you actually sent, they also capture the actual request. So I want you to imagine when we're creating this outgoing stock movement that we're actually creating it from a paper request that someone has written out for us. So a clinician has come in to our depot. They have a written list of items that they need that they've given to us. And we are now filling that request. So let's say the person who requested it is Martine Vianney. So I've put her name in here to indicate that she was the person who requested these items and when she requested them. So possibly she requested them today, or possibly we got the request a few days ago and we're just working on it now. Let's say she requested them today. This next page allows us to put in the items that were requested. Now once again, this is not the same as the items that we shipped out, right? Because sometimes people submit a paper request and we don't have exactly what they wanted. We have a slightly different quantity. The pack size is different. So the point of this first page is to record what they actually asked for. And we'll talk a little bit about why that's so important. All we have to put down on this page is the item and the quantity. So the item is searchable. I can either type in my item number, or I could type in my item name, and then I select from my dropdown. You can also use pretty much anything that has been added to the item card. So if you have an NDC, vendor number, vendor name, anything like that, it should also be searchable in here as long as it is on the item card in the description or in one of the associated fields. Then I'm going to put my quantity. So the requested quantity in this case was 200. If If there is a recipient, I can put a recipient. We talked about recipients a little bit with incoming shipments. It's just a way to indicate who these products are supposed to go to. So in this case, probably they're going to go to the requester, but maybe not. Sometimes there's a requester for an entire hospital, but certain products need to be delivered to a specific person at a specific location. And so a recipient is just a way of reminding the person that's receiving the shipment, this has to go to a specific person. You can always leave it blank if you don't need to indicate that. So I'm going to add a line, and I'm going to add another product. This time it's methyl dopa, and I'm going to say I want 1,000 of these. Actually, let's say 1,500. Now I'm going to add one more line. And I'm going to pick, 34 salbutamol were requested. So as you can see, you add each line individually. You can actually use the tab button to tab through each new request, which makes things a little bit faster. If you have a long list, you can also do this via an import. All you have to do is export the template, open it up, in this case, it shows what we already have. And then you just fill in your product code and your quantity. You can leave everything else blank, just the product code and the quantity, because those are the only things that are here on this page, right? Everything else will happen in picking. And then you import the template. So because I already had filled these out, they already have an associated requisition ID. If I import this now, it's not going to change anything. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm just going to delete these lines so that you can see the impact of the import. And then I'm just going to get rid of this because this references the requisition ID that I just deleted. So now if this is blank, we'll get a new, we'll get 3 new lines. I'm going to save this. And then I'm going to go to import template. Find my document, and there we go. The exact same result, but in a different way. So if you have a really long list and you don't want to be sort of individually clicking through each line, you can do it with an import. Another useful thing to know is if you did do an import and you did it wrong and you suddenly had 100 lines that you needed to delete, you can use the delete all button to get rid of them all at once, as opposed to deleting each individual line, which if you did have to delete 100 lines could take quite a while. So now I've put in my request. This is what the person requested from me. I'm going to go to the next page. This page is where we check what was requested against what actually exists in inventory. And so you can see that I have a few problems. For this first line, quantity requested is 200, quantity available is 246. It's black, not red. We're home free. We don't have to worry about quantity here. So we can essentially just skip this line. We don't have to worry about it. One thing to note is the monthly stock list quantity When we talk about stock list, we'll get more into this, but your monthly stock list quantity is essentially the amount that you have committed to give out per month to various programs. So you have said that these 4 programs should be using 142 a month. It's just to help you think about your stock. So if you have 246 available, but you know that you're probably going to give out another 142 this month, you might have a different feeling about whether you're able to get the stock out now. So it's just for your information. There's no reason that you have to use this or have to look at it. So once again, if the quantity available is more than the quantity requested, I don't have to do anything. The only items that I have to look at are the ones where my quantity available does not meet my quantity requested, because I can't issue quantity that isn't in stock. So in this case, I've requested 1,002 methyl dopas, but we actually only have 100 available. So I have to revise the quantity that I'm going to ship. The obvious answer is to put 100, because that's what we have available, but I could also put 90 or 0 if I didn't want to give the entire amount that I have in stock. Anytime you revise the quantity, you have to give a reason why you did that. So the available reason codes are stock out, low stock, package size contains a different quantity, approved change, earlier expiration date, supplied by government, could not locate, and pharmacist approved substitution. The ones I'm going to focus on are stock out and low stock. Stock out means we have 0. Low stock means we don't have enough. So in this case, this is clearly a case of low stock. Just to go over what the other ones mean, package size contains different quantity means that, say someone requested 999, you might change that value to 1,000 because your pills come in bottles of 1,000. So that's what that one means. Approved change is really a catch-all for any change where you're making this decision not based on a stock issue that you have, but based on the fact that you don't think the request is correct. So maybe your pharmacist reviewed the request and has said that there's not really a justification for this request based on the consumption, or maybe they spoke to the person, the requester, and the requester agreed to change their request to a more appropriate item. So anything like that where you're making a change that is based on your clinical discretion and not based on whether you actually have it available would be an approved change. Earlier expiration date means that you wanted to go with a product that expired earlier. Supplied by government is something that is used specifically by PIH to indicate if the government donated something from that request before it came to you. And then could not locate is quite clear. And we'll get into substitutions later. So that's what all of the reason codes mean. Like I said, the ones you're going to use the most are probably stock out and low stock. So in this case, it's low stock. So here for salbutamol, I also have the same problem, right? I have a stock out, 0 quantity available. But the difference between this one and the methyl dopa is that I have a substitution. So this handy little box here tells you if there is a substitution for this product available in stock. In these cases, there wasn't one. But now we have this nice little yes. The yes says, okay, there is a substitution available. So if you're out, you can look at what's available to substitute here. So this shows me what my product is, how much was requested, and then what's available for a substitution. So What's available is the 90 microgram inhaler versus the 100 microgram inhaler. This looks great. I think that's a perfectly doable substitution, and we have 500 available. So I'm going to select 34 of this product instead of the out-of-stock product. And I'm going to press save. So this is a really great way to just make sure that even if you're out of stock of something, you're still looking at all the available options to make sure your clinicians get as close to what they want as possible. And you can see that the reason code was automatically filled in as a pharmacist-approved substitution because you just did a substitution. If you decided at any point that you didn't like what you did, you could press the undo button and it would go back to normal. So if I press undo, I'm just back to the original request line. I'm going to do my substitute again. Great. And once again, you only have to make these edits if your quantity available is below your quantity requested. Otherwise, if everything looks good, you can just skip this page and go straight to next. So now that I've made my edits, I'm going to go to next. This page is the pick page. So this page picks for me what lots I should be choosing based on a few criteria. The first one is the earliest expiration date. So it chooses for me the lots that have the earliest expiration date for me to go find. The next thing is if all the expiry dates are the same or there is no expiry date, it chooses from the bin with the least quantity. The idea being that if you have something in 3 different bins, you want to finish the quantity in one bin before moving on to pick from the next bin. So that's the logic behind these auto picks. So this has already decided for me exactly where I should get all of my items. What if I don't like this pick that the system has done for me? What if it doesn't work for me? Well, there is a way to edit it. So you can click edit here and change where you have picked. In this case, it's not really possible for me to change the pick because the entire quantity that was available is being picked here. So instead, I'm going to look at the salbutamol. Same thing. So, but what I can do is change the amount picked. So, for example, let's say that I went to go pick the salbutamol, and I realized once I was looking at it on the shelf that they come in packs of 10, and I don't want to open up the pack. So I'm going to change the number I pick from 34 to 40 because I had to pick in packs of 10. And then I'm going to choose my reason code. Package size contains different quantity. And just to be clear, you don't need a reason code to change the lots or the bins that you pick from. You only need a reason code if you've changed the actual quantity that you're picking, which makes sense, right? Because nobody, you know best which lots and bins you should be picking from, and so there's no reason to justify that change. But if you're changing the quantity from what the requester has said they want to another quantity, you have to enter why you've done that so that the requester can understand why their quantity is now different. So that's an example of what it would look like if you edit a pick. This adjust stock feature is currently in development. So right now, if you click it, it will just give you a button that says we're still working on it. The idea is that you would be able to, if you found during picking a stock inaccuracy, you could adjust your stock from here. And once again, just like in the previous page, we have an undo edit button. So if I press undo, it will automatically revert to the previous auto pick. The other thing you can do on this page that's very important is print your pick list. Your pick list has all of the products that you're looking to pick, the bin location that you're supposed to pick from, the serial number and lot number that you're supposed to pick, and the expiration date, and then your suggested pick. And then there's a space for the warehouse assistant or the pharmacy assistant to confirm what they picked. So if they, for example, had an issue, they could write in why the pick was different from what you initially asked them to pick, and then you could go back and make that edit here. It also shows the edits that you've already made. So you can see that this is actually a different product than was initially requested and why. And you can see that this is a different amount than was initially requested and why. And then it shows who requested this, who created the pick, and then there's places to sign for those who have actually done the pick and done the checking. So let's say I've completely finished my pick. Everything has been picked, checked. It looks good. I go to next. This page is the pack page. Now, we only really need to use the pack page if you are shipping to another depot in the system and you want them to have information about what pallet and box certain items are in. So it's probably only relevant if you're working in a really large central warehouse that's sending to a lot of other smaller warehouses large shipments. Because then when they receive the shipment, they can see what's in what pallet and what's in what box, and that helps them sort the items. If you're sending a small shipment like this, or if you're sending anywhere outside the network where they aren't going to necessarily receive this information, then you don't need to put your pallet and box here, and you can just skip this page. The other thing you can put in here is your recipient. So we already talked about what a recipient is, but it's essentially a person that needs to be notified when a product arrives at the facility. And if you want to put things in multiple pallets or put one item in 2 pallets, you can split your line. So let's say 2 of these are in pallet 1 and 2 are in pallet 2. This gives you the option to indicate that they're in 2 separate pallets. Okay. Once you finish the pack stage, or if you just want to skip the pack stage, you can press next. And this brings you to your final page. So on the final page, you can verify exactly what's on your packing list. If you do see anything that doesn't look correct, that isn't what you wanted, you can just go back to the previous pages and make changes, and then come back to this page. So at this point, if you find errors, all you have to do is click previous and go back and make the change. You put your ship date. This always defaults to today, but just a reminder that if you are entering a shipment that actually happened previously, you should put the date that the shipment actually happened. Otherwise, if the shipment is happening today, you can just leave it as is. You choose your shipment type. So I'm going to say, since this is going from one location in Haiti to another location in Haiti, it's a land shipment. For a land shipment, you might not have a tracking number. If you were doing an air shipment, you could put an airway bill here. If you're doing a sea shipment, you could put a BOL. Maybe you have an internal waybill for land shipments, and you could put the waybill number there. Or if you don't have a tracking number that's useful for you, you can just leave it blank. You can put a driver name if that's useful for you, so who's actually transporting the goods, so you could follow up with them later if there were any issues. And then you can put a comment. The comment can be anything that you think might be useful either for the recipient or for you yourself to look back on this and think if you had questions. So once I have put in my ship date, my shipment type, and my tracking number, etc., I can send my shipment. Now, before I send my shipment, I have the option to print a delivery note. I can also do this after I send my shipment, so there's no harm in waiting, but there's also an option to print before. So I can export the delivery note. The delivery note is a really amazing document because it shows not only what you sent, but also what you sent versus what the original request was. So it gives you all your basic information, what's the origin, the destination, who requested it. But it also shows you, for example, that 200 of these masks were requested and we delivered 200. And here are the lot numbers for all of those 200 broken down by quantity. You can see here that 1003 was requested, but 13009 was actually issued. 34 were requested, but 40 were actually issued. Here's the lot number and expiration date, and it says why. Substituted to pharmacy, approved to substitution. And finally, for the methyl dopa, you can see 1,500 requested and only 100 delivered, and you can see that the reason for that is low stock. So this is incredibly useful if you think about it from a clinician's perspective. The clinician submits their request, they don't hear anything for a bit, they get a delivery note, they get something back. It's not exactly what they thought. And they're confused as to why. And you know, in that situation, a lot of times you end up with a lot of phone calls or people coming to see you at the depot and say, I don't understand why what I asked for is not what I got. And in this case, you eliminate all of that because you make it very clear to them exactly why their delivery note might be different from what they requested. So they can see that the reason they didn't get exactly the product they wanted was because you made a substitution. And they can see that the reason you sent 100 is not because you made a mistake, but because there weren't 1,500 available. You had low stock. So it's a great way to make sure that the requester gets a lot of information about what happened to their request. There's also multiple signature lines that you can use to verify your delivery note and then keep it on file. There are several other exports that you can do. This export packing list just gives you a nice clean table that shows exactly what's in the shipment. The packing list gives you an Excel document that is formatted like a traditional packing list that can be shared with your recipients or others as documentation. And then the certificate of donation provides you with a commercial invoice. so that you can see the value of the goods that were sent by quantity and unit price. And there are some options for signatures here as well. Finally, there's also an opportunity to upload documents. So if, for example, you had a specific document that you required to be stored for every shipment, if you had a vendor packing list that you wanted to upload, pictures, whatever you might want to store here in Open Boxes, you can upload, and then that will be available forever on this shipment. So the next thing I'm going to do is just send my shipment. Now that I've sent this shipment, I can see that I come to the shipment view page. It shows me that my shipment status is shipped. I can see the shipment ID, the name, which includes the origin, destination, date requested, and description. I have a lot of great information both here and here about the tracking number, the comments, etc., the total value of the shipment. And then here I can see the packing list. So I can see that I have a lot of unpacked items, and then one item in pallet 2 and one item in pallet 1. I can also go back and look at the request details, and this will show me exactly what happened to the initial request. So the packing list shows you this is what actually was sent. The request detail shows you this is what was requested versus what was actually issued. So you can see, for example, for this item, 1,500 was requested, 100 was approved, and 100 was picked and issued. So the total adjustment is a negative 1,400. And then the reason code for that is low stock. So it's important to note that in addition to giving the clinician really great information about what exactly happened to their request, this is also incredibly useful in terms of forecasting. If you save this data, you're essentially capturing not only your consumption, what you actually send, but your demand. And that is very important if you have, let's say, several months of stock out. You're sending 0 during that time because you don't have any to send. But then if you look back at your consumption, you might think that you didn't need any. You only required 0. But if you use the stock movement feature correctly, what you'll be able to see for each item is not only what was actually sent, but also what was requested and we just weren't able to fill. And we can take that into account for consumption. I'll also note that the available documents here can be printed at any time, either pre or post shipment. So once again, we have the delivery note. You can even print the pick list. You can export a packing list. We have the formatted packing list, certificate of donation, and then also a Word document, certificate of donation and packing list. Let me just click through one of these items so that you can see exactly how this affects our electronic stock card. So let's say we have 1002, 10002. If I go to my stock history, I can now see at the bottom that Kelsey Nagel just transferred out to Ash Depot via this shipment, 681 FYR, 100 units. 60 came from pallet A1 and 60 came from pallet A2, and I now have 0 available. The last thing that I will show you is once you've created an outbound stock movement, How do you see your outbound stock movements that you created? Well, you go to outbound and list outbound movements. This will give you a list of every stock movement sent out of this location since the beginning of time. It also shows you your status, the identifier and name, which are both links to the stock movement details page, the origin, which of course is always your location, and then your destination. If there was a stock list associated, who requested it, the date requested, and date created. You can see that there are also pending shipments listed. So this shipment has not yet gone out. It's in progress, but it can still be seen here in its draft form. Same thing here with this shipment that's still in the picking process. So if I wanted to see specifically all of the shipments that have been shipped, I can filter here by shipped. Or if I wanted, for example, to see all of the shipments that have been shipped to a particular location, let's say circa la source. I now have a list of everything that has been shipped to circa la source. So that was a brief tutorial on outbound stock movements. I hope you enjoyed it, and I would encourage you to move on to watch our video about using outbound stock movements with a stock list.